Christian parenting.
Support for Paradox comes from the Timothy Center, your online counseling center, no matter where you live. The Timothy Center is a faith-based counseling center in Austin, Texas, offering online teletherapy for those that live in Texas but outside the Austin area. If you have questions and would like to consult with Jimmy, Josh, or one of their licensed professionals, visit them at timothycenter.com. Recording live from Austin, Texas, powered by the Christian Parenting Podcast Network, a conversation about marriage and family that women will love and guys won't want to turn off. Doctors Jimmy Myers and Josh Myers are a paradox.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paradox. I'm Jimmy.
And I am Josh.
And because you and I are both by birth Dallas Cowboy fans.
And friends.
We're friends and Cowboy fans. Because of that, we have a unique perspective on humility. Because we have been forced to eat humble pie.
For 24 years.
See, a quarter of a century. And so we come to this title today from having lived it, really.
But let's talk about the Cowboys for just a second.
No, I don't want to.
Out of their 50-year existence.
It's more than 50. It's 60.
Isn't it 69?
I thought they started in the year 60.
Oh, then it would be. Yeah, that'd be 60 years then.
Because I was born in 59.
Okay. They were from Washington, right? Or is that the Rangers? Rangers came from Washington, D.C.
Correct. They were,
they're Kansas City.
The Dallas Texans moved to Kansas City.
Yes.
The Hunts.
And then came from Kansas City.
And then the Dallas Cowboys just were brand new, didn't come from any place. They filled the spot that the Dallas Texans left.
Oh, so the Texans went to Kansas
and
City.
Your Aunt Vicky saw Lamar Hunt in his underwear.
Huh. Did she get any money out of that?
Just a little thing. She was in the youth choir at First Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently so were the Hunt daughters or sons or whatever.
Yeah.
And they had some big thing at their house. There it is. Oh, I didn't even think she could milk some money out of that.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe
a
she's
really
got
good
an
idea.
image or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, out of
pre-iPhone.
Out of 60 years that the Cowboys have been in existence, they've really only had 2 good decades.
Mm-hmm. 4 really bad decades. 4 bad decades.
But they're considered one of the best. I mean, we have the second most
makes no sense.
Super Bowls out of anybody. So we really capitalize on our good years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot more futility than we'd like to admit.
Very similar to the Horns. Everyone thinks they're blue blood. They have this reputation for being the elite, and they're not.
They always seem to screw it up.
Mm-hmm. Which brings us back to humility.
We're talking about humility today.
We're talking about how do we raise humble kids in an unhumble society. Can you see, is unhumble? Non-humble?
Yeah.
Humbleless?
Humble. Humble.
So,
isn't it a silent humble?
I don't know. So today, if you look at professional sports, social media, politics, everyone's just screaming, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. The sports just infuriates me. If someone makes a tackle, they jump up and they bow their chest out, and it's like, don't you just get paid to do that? Every time someone walks out of my counseling office, I'll go, yeah, rip my shirt. Yeah. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? I forget who it was, but they said when you make a touchdown, act like you've been there before.
Wasn't that Emmett?
Did Emmett say? I hope Emmett said that. God bless him.
Or Roger.
So anyway, I mean, we live in this, this world of self-aggrandizement,
which
and
is
entitlement.
It is the American way, and I don't want to step on any toes here, and we don't have to go. I mean, this wasn't created out yesterday. I mean, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, capitalism, like it's very individualistic culture, me. So yeah, I think that it wasn't internet or social media, although that obviously made it worse.
Inflames it.
But I think that it's very American to fight for yourself.
That is
and
true.
Your way of life.
But if you were raised like I was, to, as we've talked about before, to mimic John Wayne. Rugged individualism, silent. And we've talked before about how John Wayne was like the worst ever. But not only is it do it yourself, but there's also, I think, involved in the Protestant work ethic. There's a humility to that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a yin and a yang.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there can be a good way to go about the rugged individualism, but potentially I can find nowhere
Little lady.
in Scripture to actually justify the individualism. But that's another topic for another time. Yeah, I don't think Scripture supports our American way of life.
Wow.
Cancel paradox.
Hashtag. So humility just stands in complete contrast, whether we want to blame it on John or social media. Humility stands in direct contrast to where we are today. I mean, because humility, man, just think about humility. If humility was dominant on social media or in sports or in politics, because humility allows for there to be honesty. Like, oh, I might have done something wrong.
Yeah.
A curiosity of, that's so interesting, your point of view. Just because you're a Democrat, I don't automatically reject it. I'm interested in what you might have to say. And open-mindedness.
Humility allows us to change our opinions.
No.
And not be vilified for it.
Yes. So the problem is, and this is something that my daddy always used to say, if you have to toot your own horn, then your horn ain't worth tooting. Inevitably, the problem with just this hyper-focus on winning and success and popularity, inevitably someone has to lose in order for you to win. And if we're going to hyper-focus on winning and being successful, then that is to put other people under your feet. So it does set up this, people have said about Bill Gates, he doesn't want to win. He wants to take the person in second place and just gut them and leave them dying on he doesn't just want to win. It's about annihilation of any and all competition. I loved it. Okay. I loved it when you played sports and you would tackle somebody and you could just absolutely decleat them and then you would help them up. I've always felt, okay, that's it. You play really, 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 really hard, but we are two human beings, and you express that when you play. So,
what about when you would hit him and then you stepped on the guy's leg?
Oh, that wasn't good at all. Yeah, that wasn't good.
Dad one time just ripped into a guy with his cleats. That would have been awesome, though.
And I thought no one saw, and apparently some people saw.
So he had to go to the other person's locker room.
Yes.
And apologize.
Think about this. This is what I love about team sports. I go up to our coach, Coach Clyde Evett. God bless him. And I said, Coach, I'm really sorry. And I didn't even finish until he said, yeah, you cleated that guy pretty good, didn't you? And I said, well, I just wanted to apologize. And he said, well, I'm not the one you should apologize to. And took me and walked me over to their locker room. Had me apologize to the superintendent, the principal, the coach, the players, and I am 60 and I remember it like it was yesterday. So the problem is we just live in a culture and there are cultural norms that almost just snuff out any attempts at humility. So solution.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I mean, we're halfway in and we have not said the reason why or the main problem why the absence of humility, why that is an issue. And that's because it's anti-Christ. The absence, Christ, Philippians 2, he humbled himself. If we're supposed to be Christ followers, humility should be at our core. And so subsequently, if we don't have humility, we are not great representations of Christ.
Obviously, you missed it. When he came up out of the grave and all the disciples met and they had this coordinated end zone dance that they did when he came triumphantly out of the tomb. Mm-hmm. Other than that one example, he was pretty humble for most of the time. But yes, humility is Christ-likeness. What's going on now with entitlement and self-aggrandizement, all of that is
I do want to say, I pick on the American culture, and there's a lot to pick on, but it is humanity. I mean, we're obviously going to screw it up. It's humanity's fault that we lack humility. It's not the American idealisms, although that certainly perpetuates it.
Original
It's
sin
humanity's
has
fault.
something
Yeah,
to do with it.
exactly.
So what we're shooting for, our goals need to be, for our children, because we're talking really about how do we do this with our kids? How do we inject humility into them? And what we want is to teach them how to present their ideas and views modestly, teaching them how to share praise, how to share blame, to be able to, even just think about the needs of other people. Because those are the things, not, by the way, winning and success and popularity. Those are the things. Modesty and, sharing praise and blame, empathy, all those things have been shown empirically to increase a person's happiness, strengthen relationships, and achieve professional success.
Well, it's allowing the other person to exist.
Yes.
Both in their opinions and their person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cutting people off because they wronged you, not allowing them to have that physical space, and it's also not yelling and screaming and name calling when they have a different opinion. It's just allowing other people to exist side by side with you that might have harmed or done something wrong and or had a wrong, according to you, opinion.
Isn't it so odd that you even have to say things like that? Allow people to exist. Allow them to have a different point of view. And, by the way we do that as parents is that is how we're teaching our kids to do this. If we parent with an eye on emotional responses and reactions, not just their behaviors, but bring up being humble. If you see your child mimic a professional athlete that's, pounding their chest, oh gosh, how cute that is. But have a little teachable moment after the game about showing humility. So we want to be able to bring up humility. We want to be able to bring up sharing of praise. Hey, that was a really good goal, but you didn't take it from the other end all the way down all by yourself and defeat the entire other team all by you. No, you had other people that helped do that, which, by the way, is one of the great things about team sports. Team sports really should be about teaching humility because, other than tennis or golf or for the most, a team sport, it is about the offensive lineman sacrificing so that the quarterback can throw, so that the guy can catch. It's nobody is a one-man show, which theoretically ought to help in the humility category.
But even, within playing an instrument by yourself, it doesn't have to be a team sport, and having respect for the instrument, that the instrument is very difficult to learn and that there's going to be a lot more failure than there is going to be success. It doesn't even have to be a team sport for us to teach this. It's the idea of accepting failure, that you're going to fail more often than you're going to succeed. And if we can get to a place where we can accept the failure, there's true and genuine and pure humility that ensues. And therefore, we don't just get bent out of shape anytime we fail.
Which is why putting an overemphasis on winning and success
and perfection
is such an issue. Because if winning is the only thing to you, Dad, if being popular and how many likes a kid gets or how many people like or comment on something we put on social media, if that is so important to us, then we're really producing within ourselves an emotional fragility that can't handle the reality of succeeding sometimes, failing sometimes. And if we learn from the failures, that's what failures are for. And most coaches will tell you that you learn more from a defeat than you do from a victory.
It's just really hard to always have defeats. Like I just said, sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to win. The softball team I coach is never going to win. It's just always
no, they're not
failing.
I don't know. You could book something with the blind school for toddlers.
So we play this sweet little league, Town and Country. And I don't think that they had a lot of enrollees this fall because of COVID. So the league was only able to field 2 teams. And first of all, softball, baseball, that's more of a spring sport. Mm-hmm. So fall ball, you're very serious anyway, those that are playing. And so since Town and Country could not be so incredibly self-contained and only play each other, we couldn't play just one other team for 12 games. We're playing like fall ball travel teams. So we're and then we ourselves are traveling. So we're going to Georgetown and Liberty Hill and Bertram. And it's just sweet little innocent girls that do not understand the game at all. And we are getting creamed.
I just want to pause on the
Humility.
concept of 7-year-old travel teams.
All right, no, we don't have to go there, though.
No, we don't. All right, so
But we are practicing humility.
yes, I love this. Unless, as parents, we're going to, not just focus on behavior, but we're going to talk about humility, and we're going to talk about empathy, and we're going to fold that into those teachable moments that we have with our kids. Because if we don't, then we've just left our kids with nothing but peers and culture to have that influence and to be able to teach them those things. So it all comes down to modeling more than anything, because we can talk about humility and the need for that in our children unless they see us be the exact opposite when it comes to sports or politics or whatever. So model a lack of defensiveness, because I think defensiveness is another thing that's just the exact opposite of humility. If someone has a problem with something that I did, and my automatic response is to defend it, as though the concept of me doing something wrong or making it, that is not even conceivable. Therefore, if I'm criticized, I'm going to defend myself. So we have to model a lack of defensiveness. We need to point out and praise when we see our kids not being defensive. Instead of trying to explain or excuse what they did, they just accept responsibility for it. Bam, point that out. Boy, that's a trait that we want to really, really foster in our kids.
Back to the modeling, probably the best place or relationship where you can model it, yes, on Facebook and when watching the TV or having a disagreement at work, but marital oneness is probably the best way for you to, if you're married, model humility is towards your spouse, because your kids will pick up on all the nonverbal cues. And if there's a lack of humility, and if there's intense defensiveness, and if there's competition in your marriage, your kids are picking up on that. And so probably the best relationship to model humility to your kids is through your marriage.
And I would take this moment to once again push Gary Thomas's book, Sacred Marriage, when basically he's saying maybe the purpose of marriage is not our happiness, but our holiness. And about how marriage really is this crucible to teach us about our faith and who God created us to be. So then lastly, we got to define and stress and model and teach empathy. Because once again, empathy is also sort of the opposite of a lack of humility in this self-aggrandizement. So empathy, again, we've done shows on empathy before, but as a refresher, it's being able to see through someone else's eyes, to see and understand their perspective. Empathy is not to agree with their perspective. It's to understand where that perspective came from. Again, I'm about as anti-abortion as they come, but some 16-year-old girl has an abortion. I go, okay. Really, really, really bad choice. Really, really, really horrific choice. But do I get where she came from? I would have to be almost non-human not to understand where she came from. I don't agree with it, but I can see how she got there as a 16-year-old. So being able to model compassion for others and empathy is crucial.
One other area I think that we breed humbleness, that's how we're saying it, right? Is academically. I think that we as parents can put so much pressure on our kids to perform. We're building a college resume at kindergarten to get into the perfect schools, and then how much we puff up our chest when our kids get into that school. And we can have competition, and we can even have joy and pride, but we have to have humility in our kids' academics. And we need to be careful not to only praise them when they do well in school. I know that a lot of times, especially in high school, if our kid's struggling, all of our conversations turn into school, and they're all negative with our kids. And I think that there can be this nonverbal message to our kids that you have to be perfect academically. And I think that plays into the humbleness. with our kids. So we've highlighted a lot today sports, but I think it happens academically a lot with parents.
Oh, without question, which is why we devoted an entire chapter of the book that I wrote with George Barna, Fearless Parenting, Raising Faithful Kids in a Faithless Culture, Secular Culture. I forget. Talk about that whole thing, that academics in some ways is worse because every kid's involved in academics, but not every kid is going to be involved in sports, and how the parents push it. And research study after research study has shown that success in school does not necessarily equate to success after school, that there is a lot more involved than simply getting good grades when it comes to the success of someone, later in life.
I'm glad research supports what I always told myself.
Yeah.
Josh, just because you have to work hard for your 78s does not mean you will be successful.
Exactly. Humility, model it.
If you want more information about this episode or anything previous, it's paradoxpodcast.com. You can also find us on our socials there. You can also always go to christianparenting.org/paradox and find us on our podcasting network website as well. Hope you have a great day.
See ya.
For more information about the voice of the Paradox Podcast, Julie Lyles Carr, go to julielylescarr.com. And if you want more details about what was discussed on today's show and find the archive of all our past shows, go to paradoxpodcast.com.